Hey folks, welcome back to the first step of brewing. Hopefully you've got everything together now, and we're going to start on the process called the mash. The mash process is the process by which we get the enzymes in the malted barley to work on the starches in the barley and convert them into sugars. Because we want those sugars to come out so that the yeast can ferment it and turn it into alcohol and carbon dioxide. We're also going to be getting some of the flavours out from the malt into our wort. Wort is what we call beer before it's been fermented. So what we need to do, we need to activate those enzymes and get them in contact with the starch. So in the mashing process, what we do is we mix the malts with water at a specific temperature so that the enzymes come awake and that they can swim, or they don't actually move, but so they're distributed around all the starches in the malt and that they can convert those starches into sugars for us. The enzymes we want work between 60 and 72 degrees centigrade. Below 60, they don't work. Above 72, they die. Or they don't die, they go through a process called denaturing. Because these aren't living organisms, enzymes are just catalysts to make those reactions happen. Ideally though, we want them to be between 64 degrees centigrade and 70 centigrade. So what we're aiming for is towards the top end of that scale. 68 degrees is where we would like this to happen, because then as the mash happens, it'll slowly cool down, but it'll stay in that temperature range for the entire hour that we're going to leave it. What I'd like you to do, we've got to remember that the malt is actually cold. So when we add it into the water is going to get cooler. So in order to end up with 68 degrees with the malt in the water, we want to start with water that's 72 degrees. So if I can ask everyone to take the 5 litres from their bottle, or 5 litres of tap water if that's what you're using, put it in your pot and warm it up to 72 degrees. Use your thermometer to keep track of that, and remember that it's going to keep warming up a bit after you've taken it off the stove because of the heat in the base of the pan. So you probably need to take it off at about 70 and stir it around because the temperatures will fluctuate in the different parts of the pot. So you're aiming for 72. For those of you that don't have thermometers, I'm going to try something I haven't done before. I know that it's technically possible, so I'm doing what's called a decoction. But what we do there is we mix waters of known temperatures together to try and get to that 72. So we know that boiling water is 100 degrees centigrade, and we know that roughly the temperature around where my bottle of water has been standing is 20 to 25 degrees. So what I'm going to do in my pot is I'm going to mix 4 litres of boiling water with 1 litre of the cold water, and that should give me 5 litres of water at 82 degrees. Don't worry about the maths for now. Because my pot is cold, I'm hoping the temperature of that cold pot will drop it down to the 72 degrees I'm aiming for. So while you were away, I've boiled the 4 litres of water and added it to my pot. I'd just like to show you how I've got my pot set up. So if we come over here, what you can see is my pot is wrapped in a blanket. So I put the blanket down on the counter, placed a trivet on it so that I'm not putting the base of the pan directly onto the blanket, because if that's come off at a stove, you might melt or damage your blanket and then you'll be in trouble. And then my pot on top with the closed lid, and then I just wrap it up. So at the moment I have in here the 4 litres of water, and I'm going to go ahead and add the 1 litre of cold water. So let me just put the phone down again for a second. Okay, so I'm taking the last litre, the 1 litre of cold water, adding it in there. And something you'll notice I do is I put the lid straight back on top of the bottle. We're going to use this as our fermenter later, and so that I don't have, at the moment inside is sterile, and I want to keep it sterile. That's why I keep putting the lid straight back on so that I don't let any germs or bacteria that's floating around in the air get into the bottle. So I want to keep that sterile for later. Okay, so I'm just going to cover this up and just give it a minute for all of those temperatures to mix around and stabilize, because it'll take time for the temperature to transfer between the pot and the water and what's going on there. Then we'll check it. So hopefully you have your grain bag or your old pillowcase ready to go, and your malt. And we'll just do a quick time lapse here, and we're back. Let's see how we're going here. So I'm just going to give this just a stir to make sure that it's nicely evenly distributed around the pot. and I'm now going to take a temperature reading and see how close I've come to that 72 degrees. My thermometer takes a little while to adjust to temperature changes, so I'll just be with you in a moment. Okay, it's up to 71.6. Yep, I seem to have hit that 72 degrees almost immediately, exactly what we're after. So I can't be happy with that. I've never tried that before, and clearly it works. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my grain bag, I'm going to put it into the water, and I'm just hooking it over the edges of the pot so that it doesn't all fall in. Because the next thing I need to do is I need to stir my malts into that bag and into the water. So I'm just going to pour it all in. Okay. And then we're going to stir it. And what we want to do is it's very liquid, but what we want to do is we want to make sure there are no clumps, that the water is evenly dispersed around the grain so that there's a chance for all the enzymes to move around, for the malt to move around, and for that saccharification to happen so that we get the starches converting. If I check my temperature again now, it should be at about 68 degrees. I'm not going to do that because there's not much I can do about it right now anyway. So it was 72 at the start, that was the important bit to get right. What we're going to do now is we're going to close it up, wrap it up in the blanket. So basically we want to make sure this stays warm through the mashing process. It now needs to sit here for an hour to let the enzymes do their work. What I do say is keep it covered. We want to keep that heat in there and we want it to stay as close to that 68 as possible through the mashing process. If it goes down a couple of degrees, we're okay, as long as it doesn't go below 64. And what we're going to do is just once. So after half an hour, if you can open it up, stir it, and then close it back up again. I'll see you in an hour's time, and then we'll move on to the boil, which is step 2.